Association football is the most popular sport on earth, watched and played by millions, if not billions of people every weekend. It's a sport which can make the world stand still, stop wars, and rock whole nations. Those of you who are subscribed to this YouTube channel will know that I'm rather passionate about both history and football, and few subjects get my juices flowing quite as much as the combination of the two. So today I've set myself the task of trying to give the most comprehensive rundown of the entire history of the sport in under 10 minutes. That isn't an easy task, and if you're wondering why I'm not speaking faster, that's because I haven't started yet. I'm right about to though, and if I could, I'd stick a clock in the corner of this video to count down my 10 minutes, though I suspect I'm too technologically challenged to figure out how to do that. Right, strap in, get ready, and set your stopwatches. Here is the history of football in under 10 minutes. Numerous territories lay claim to having been the earliest interpretations of football, dating all the way back to ancient empires. FIFA recognises the Chinese sport of Kuju in the 3rd century BC as the earliest form of football for which there is evidence, but the Japanese had another variation of the sport called Kamari, along with the ancient Greeks and Romans who also had ball games played with the feet. Accounts from English explorers even report a form of the sport being played by the Inuit people of Greenland in the 1500s, the Native Americans in Virginia in the 1600s, and on the Australian continent by Indigenous Australians in the 1880s. Meanwhile, back in Europe, and particularly in Britain and Ireland, there was a rather lawless and aggressive medieval sport, sometimes referred to as mob football, typically played between local villages. The early seeds of football as we know it were sown in upper-class public schools in England, and these fee-paying schools were the first to start to codify the sport in the 1700s. In the early to mid-1800s, Cambridge rules and Sheffield rules were the dominant codes, but both would soon be replaced with the founding of the Football Association in 1863. The world's first football association, the FA, were headed up by Hull native Ebenezer Cobb Morley, who drew up the first unified laws of the game the year the organisation was founded. The world's first association football clubs such as Cambridge University, Barnes, Sheffield FC and Hallam FC were founded in the mid-1800s, and not long after, in 1860, the first non-British team was founded in Lucerne in Switzerland, followed by the first non-European team, Buenos Aires FC, founded in Argentina in 1867. Both Lucerne and Buenos Aires football clubs were founded by British people, by railway workers and managers in Argentina, and by students in Switzerland, and they represented the start of the sport spreading internationally. In 1867, the world's first football tournament, the Udan Cup, took place in Sheffield and was won by Hallam FC. 5 years later, the world's first nationwide competition and the world's oldest football tournament still in existence was born, the Football Association Cup, with the first final seeing London club Wanderers FC overcome the Royal Engineers. The first international football match between England and Scotland took place in 1870, followed by the first international match recognised by FIFA in 1872. Both games ended in draws. During the 1870s and 1880s, football went from a rigidly individualistic sport in which players looked to dribble as far as they could without losing the ball to a much more tactical team sport, an innovation led primarily by the Scottish clubs. During this time, British students, workers and touring teams began to spread the FA's laws of the game further onto France, Germany, Canada and Scandinavia. In 1873, the FA decided that teams should swap halves at half-time and brought in sendings off for serious foul play, a rule implementation still lambasted by Sergio Ramos to this day. Crossbars replaced tape at the top of the goal, matches were set 90 minutes in length, and referees were given whistles. In 1885, professionalism was legalised as the FA feared the major northern clubs forming a breakaway league, and in 1888, the Football Association created the world's first football league, known as the Football League, with 12 founding members. Preston North End won the world's first league title, becoming the first and still the only English team to go unbeaten during an entire campaign, as they also lifted the FA Cup. The 1890s saw the further globalisation of football, along with the introduction of nets, as New Zealand, Argentina and Singapore joined the list of countries with their own football associations. In 1904, FIFA was founded as world football's governing body, along with Hull City of course, and in 1906, England joined the organisation. Significantly, football was officially introduced as part of the Olympic Games at the 1908 Games in London in what would be the first meeting of international teams in a global knockout competition. Football had been played at the 1900 and 1904 Games, but only by clubs and scratch teams. France was so keen that they entered 2 teams, but their first string were beaten 17-1 by Denmark, who went on to lose 2-0 to the host Great Britain in the gold medal match. Great Britain won gold again in 1912, the same year that goalkeepers were banned from using their hands outside of the area. Meanwhile, Uruguay won the first Copa America in 1916. Following the First World War, which disrupted European football, the game's first stars were born. The likes of Dixie Dean, Arthur Friedenreich and Jose Andrade reached a level of fame outside of their home nations not previously seen. The 1924 Olympics was the first time European and South American opposition had met at international level, and Uruguay cruised to the gold medal, although Denmark and Great Britain refused to compete due to FIFA refusing to enforce a strict all-amateur status. The same dispute saw the FA pull out FIFA altogether in 1928, meaning they would not feature in the 1930, 1934 or 1938 World Cups. Uruguay defended their crown in style once again at the 1928 Olympics, and FIFA awarded them hosting rights for the very first World Cup finals in 1930. There were almost no European teams at the world's first World Cup before Jules Rimet intervened, and Belgium, France, Yugoslavia and Romania ended up making the journey by sea. Uruguay and Argentina were always the favourites, and they crushed all in their wake en route to the final, where Uruguay became the first FIFA World Cup winners. In 1934, fascist Italy were chosen as the hosts, a reminder that questionable host selection by FIFA is not a new invention. Uruguay refused to participate due to the European teams not travelling to South America, the Brits were still in FIFA exile, and Italy won the trophy after Mussolini picked and met with the referees for all of Italy's games. As suspect as that sounds, and indeed was, Italy did prove their class by becoming the first back-to-back World Cup winners in France in 1938. A major international club competition was set up in 1927 called the Mitropa Cup, competed between the best club sides in Central Europe, and it would be the precursor to the European Cup. There were no World Cups between 1934 and 1950, with so many nations involved in the devastation of the Second World War, but some tremendous teams emerged as the conflicts came to an end. Britain had been decimated by the war, but England had managed to assemble their best ever team during that time, as Stanley Matthews became arguably the sport's first global superstar, joined by tremendous footballers like Rage Carter, Neil Franklin, Wilf Mannion and Tommy Lawton. Another great team of the 1940s was the Torino side known as Grande Torino, who provided the bulk of the Italy team at the time. Torino won 4 consecutive league titles up until 1949, when their entire team was killed in the Superga air disaster in Turin as the team returned home from a game against Benfica. The World Cup returned in 1950, and it returned to South America for the first time since 1930. Brazil were the hosts and huge favourites. England were humiliated by the rank amateurs of the United States at their first World Cup, signalling the end of their golden generation. Meanwhile, Uruguay returned to the competition following 2 decades away. They returned in spectacular fashion, coming from a goal down in the decisive game of the finals against the host nation Brazil, winning 2-1 to make it 2 from 2 for La Celeste at the World Cup. The final game was watched by a world record attendance of 199,854 people, with more than 170,000 paying spectators, and multiple sources suspecting the actual attendance to have been well in excess of 200,000. Health and safety regulations mean that record is unlikely to ever be exceeded, and Brazil entered a state of national shock and grief following defeat to Uruguay that was known as the Maracanazo. In the 1950s, a number of the world's best footballers left their domestic clubs to sign lucrative contracts in Colombia, who had been exiled from FIFA, but that house of cards soon came crashing down. The decade will be best remembered for the longevity of 2 tremendous teams and the birth of one more. Ferenc Puskás will be a unifying force in the first 2, namely the Hungarian national team and Real Madrid, and Hungary's golden generation were irrepressible between 1950 and 1956, losing just 1 game in 6 years, but that game was the 1954 World Cup final against West Germany. The European Cup was founded in 1955, and Real Madrid won the first 5 editions with a star-studded lineup featuring former Colombian exiles Alfredo Di Stefano and Hector Real, in addition to the likes of Puskás, Copa and Hento. The next great team was arguably the greatest ever assembled to this day, and Brazil first made their mark in 1958. Having bounced back from humiliation on home soil in 1950, like Hungary, Brazil were getting ready to break ground with a revolutionary formation and a world-class group of players. The Brazilians played a 4-2-4 formation with 2 fullbacks who attacked like no one had ever seen before, a fantastic forward line, and an ace up their sleeve. That ace was a 17-year-old named Pelé, who came into the tournament carrying an injury and as a young boy who was unknown outside of Brazil. He left it as the most famous footballer on earth, becoming Brazil's top scorer despite scoring all his goals in the knockout stages. Brazil made it back-to-back World Cups in 1962 and made it 3 from 4 with the 3rd Jules Rimet trophy in 1970. Pelé was the only player to make all 3 squads, and he spent more than a decade as the best footballer on earth. Pelé wasn't just better than all those who came before him, he was a freak of nature, and he took the sport to new levels. England's wingless wonders, marshalled by Alf Ramsey, won the 1966 World Cup sandwich between Brazil's dominance, as Geoff Hurst became the first and only man to this day to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final. England's star man in midfield, Bobby Charlton, had come back from the despair of the Munich air disaster 8 years earlier, which had wiped out so many of Manchester United's brilliant Busby Babes, but the Red Devils recovered to win both a First Division title and a European Cup in the 1960s, with a sensational attacking trio made up of Charlton, George Best and Denis Law, all 3 of whom won the Ballon d'Or. The decade also brought European Cup triumphs for Benfica, Celtic, both Milan clubs and Real Madrid once again, but ended with football giving birth to conflict in Central America, as rioting during the 1970 World Cup qualifier between Honduras and El Salvador led to the so-called Football War, taking 3,000 lives in just 100 hours. More tactical innovation arrived in the 1970s via Rinus Michels and Johan Cruyff with their idealistic total football at Ajax and with the Dutch national team. Their novel approach may have caught on even more were it not for the more rigidly set up West German team, led by Franz Beckenbauer, along with an even more pragmatic Argentina team, denying them from winning any major silverware. They couldn't be denied at club level, winning 3 consecutive European Cups, followed by 3 consecutive European triumphs for Bayern Munich. Liverpool became a domestic and European superpower in the 1970s and 80s, meanwhile Brian Clough and Peter Taylor took Nottingham Forest from the depths of the second division to 2 European Cup titles. The outstanding footballer of the 1980s was a maverick, hot-headed and stocky attacking midfielder by the name of Diego Armando Maradona, who graced a football pitch as though he were a gift from God. Maradona later claimed it was via the hand of God that he scored a handball against England at the 1986 World Cup, 4 years on from Dino Zoff lifting the trophy with Italy, but Maradona's individual brilliance was worthy of the trophy on its own in 86. By the end of the 1980s, a former shoe salesman named Arrigo Sacchi had created a 2-time European Cup winning outfit at AC Milan, and in 1990, Franz Beckenbauer became a World Cup winner for the second time, but this time as a manager. Brazil won the 1994 World Cup thanks largely to the genius of Romario, who was part of Barcelona's dream team under Johan Cruyff at the time. France's golden generation won consecutive major trophies in 1998 and 2000, followed by a 5th World Cup for Brazil in 2002, as Zinedine Zidane and Ronaldo laid down their markers as the 2 best players on earth. Both Ajax and Borussia Dortmund recorded famous Champions League glories in the 1990s, meanwhile Manchester United became the dominant force in the English game under a Scottish manager named Alex Ferguson, culminating in a treble win in 1999. The creation of the Premier League in 1992 led to further televising and commercialisation of the sport and an explosion of wages that continues to the present day. Italy were unfancied outsiders going into the 2006 World Cup following the Calciopoli scandal, but they won the tournament after Zinedine Zidane saw red in both his and the tournament's final game. The late 2000s saw the rise of Spain and Barcelona with their tiki-taka style of play under Vicente Del Bosque and Pep Guardiola, and they dominated the club and international scene between 2008 and 2012. The late 2000s also heralded the arrival of 2 footballers who would cement their reputation as 2 of the greatest of all time over the next decade, with Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi winning 11 Ballon d'Ors between them. Spanish teams dominated the Champions League thanks in no small part to those 2 in the 2010s, and Real won 3 consecutive Champions League titles in 2016, 2017 and 2018. Spain collapsed at the 2014 World Cup as Germany broke Argentine hearts, before collapsing themselves 4 years later in Russia as France won their 2nd World Cup. And that just about brings us to the present day. I hope that was under 10 minutes or close enough, I haven't seen yet. I didn't even have the time to mention the changes in the offside rule, which I've dedicated a whole video to in the past, the football stadium arms race, the Hillsborough disaster, the Taylor report that followed, the Bosman ruling, Arsenal's Invincibles, or Man City and Liverpool's recent all-conquering teams. Hopefully I didn't do too bad though. Thank you for all watching. Let me know the most significant historical events in football that you think I missed in the comments, along with any other video ideas like this that you may have for me. Feel free to give the video a like if you did enjoy it, and I would be honoured if you were to subscribe